Start. Yes, good afternoon all. Can someone confirm is the screen I have shared is visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the confirmation. We will continue our discussion from our previous class. So in our last class, we were discussing about the cyclic softening, cyclic hardening phenomena. So all these, I will go back slightly to the previous slides. Okay. So there are several effects we have discussed. Bauschinger effect, which actually means when you have pulled a material in one particular direction, and then if you reverse the direction of loading, under that reverse direction of loading, the component is going to yield much early than its actual strength in that particular direction if it was monotonically loaded. So that is what is Bauschinger effect we have discussed. Then cyclic hardening and cyclic softening. If the strength of the component increases under the cyclic load, then its monotonic stress strain property curve, then that monotonic behavior. If the strength of the component increases over cyclic load, then we will say that material is undergoing cyclically hardening. If the strength of the material is continuously decreasing under the application of applied loads, then we say it is cyclic softening. All these statements are based on the what is the stress strain behavior under monotonic case. Monotonic case becomes the reference line. With that monotonic tensile test or compression test, depending on what type of nature of loading you are discussing, monotonic stress strain behavior becomes the reference line. Keeping that as a reference, we say what happened to the stress and strain response of the material when cyclic load is applied. Okay, so we have seen all these factors, Bauschinger effect. We have seen about the cyclic hardening, cyclic softening phenomenons. Okay, and we have seen that this behavior of cyclic hardening and cyclic softening is there in a material only during a certain period, and this period we say that it is a shakedown period, and the effect of this material behavior, that means either undergo non-stabilized cyclic hardening or cyclic softening. This phenomena under every cycle, if the material goes on hardening or goes on softening, this phenomena we say as a shakedown. This effect we say shakedown, and the time required to get the stabilized stress strain relationship response, that period is known to be shakedown period. And then there was a question I have made, do all the material cyclically harden or do all the material cyclically soften? How to understand? There are all four possibilities are there. Cyclically hardening phenomena can be observed, cyclically softening phenomena can be observed. Some materials may not show you cyclically hardening or softening. It may show you the same stress strain response as you have observed for a monotonic load case. And it can either show mixed behavior. For certain number of cycle, the material may get hardened. Certain number of cycle, material may soften. Okay, so all these phenomena we will observe, and all these are related to the material structure. Microscopic level details we require to have. In general, based on the macroscopic data, that means based on the yield strength of the material, ultimate and yield strength of the material, as per the experiments by the Manson, we can observe that if the ultimate by the yield strength ratio is greater than 1.4, then in general we say material will cyclically harden. But this is not a hard and fast rule always can be taken. For most of the metals and alloys, this statement is valid. Especially Manson did his work on several type of steels. Okay, therefore, applying the same for alloys, tungsten alloy, nickel alloys, which are hard materials, or aluminum alloys, which are soft materials. Directly applicable to that alloy level, the same values may not be true always. However, as a rough approximation in the absence of data, we may assume these parameters. When ultimate to yield ratio is greater than 1.54, it comes then material is cyclically hardened. So when this ratio will increase, if the material is softer, if the material is softer, you have significant difference between yield stress and ultimate stress. Correct, no? In the stress strain diagram, if you have significant difference, say yield load is somewhere here, and then ultimate load somewhere here, stress strain diagram, stress versus strain diagram, sigma y and sigma ultimate. If there is significant difference between yield load and the ultimate load, that means material has high amount of plasticity. High amount of plasticity is there. Material can flow. Plasticity is there. Or material is ductile. Or material is softer. These are all the way we tell. Okay. So mathematical meaning here is comparing the ultimate strengths with the elastic strength or the yield strength. If the material is hard, what you know, material do not show you much difference. There is no much plasticity. You do not have plasticity much. This plasticity is very small. Not much strain is there. And ideally we say yield point and the ultimate point are same. That is what is the definition for hard materials or brittle materials. Brittle materials means ideally there should not be much deformation, negligible deformation. If there is not much plasticity, then yield and ultimate load are close enough, very close enough. The elastic limit or the yield limit, whatever you want to call, sigma y point and the sigma ultimate point are very close enough. So at that time, if you take a ratio, definitely the difference will lie less than 1.2 if these are very close values. Usually 1 point some parameter, 1.1. So like that you will get. So what does this indicate? This mathematical relation actually means if the material is hard, then under the cyclic load it may get softened. And if the material is softer, then under the cyclic load, the material may undergo cyclic hardening behavior. This is a general observation, may not be true for all the materials, even for the steel. It depending on several factors. What is the chemical composition? What is the microstructure? Okay. What is the initial hardness? There are several factors. Maybe if you are casting the grain structure, solidifying direction, grain boundaries, their interaction, what are the defects are there, what is the mechanism for dislocation pinning. So these are all the parameters which are going to affect a lot in this particular decision. So another way of identifying as a rough approximation which material may cyclically harden or soften. Because you see previous yield strength versus ultimate ratio, sigma ultimate by sigma yield, this ratio if you consider, it is not that easy to predict because most of the material it will lie in this, the moderately ductile material like steel, it will, the value might come as 1.21, Now it becomes very difficult to predict whether you want to take it and say that this is going to be cyclically softer or harden, or you want to say this is cyclically becoming stable. 1.41, there is no guarantee that material will become behave either way. Okay, so therefore the another way of representing little bit more accurate than the previous approximation could be explaining with the help of parameter n, where parameter n is nothing but the strain hardening exponent. N itself tells you at what rate the material can undergo hardening. Okay, so what is the meaning of this n value? You have the particular curve, plastic strain versus the stress curve. N value is nothing but slope of this particular relationship, plastic stress strain relationship, true plastic stress and true plastic strain. This particular relationship, the slope of this particular curve is N. Okay. So this can also be used to identify whether the material can harden or can soften. As a rough approximation, we have observed if the cyclic hardening coefficient, strain hardening exponent n is greater than 0.2, that means materials will be much softer. Such materials may cyclically harden when cyclic load is applied. If the cyclic hardening exponent is less than 0.1, then the material may cyclically soften. This is another relationship. Okay, these relationships we have already discussed. Anyways, this is a recap of our last class. Okay, then at the end, we understood that this shakedown period or the behavior material shows of undergoing cyclic hardening or cyclic softening, this type of phenomena we observe on up to a certain period of time, not throughout till the component fails. Till the component fails, the component do not undergo continuous softening or continuous hardening. Okay. Usually it is observed by practical applications and under the various tests conducted. It takes approximately 20 to 40% of the total life of that particular component to show the stabilized phenomena. Therefore, as a rough approximation to be on the safer side, we consider 50% or the median life up to the median average. We'll consider that many number of cycles are required for the specimen to undergo cyclic stable behavior, to reach the cyclically stable behavior. Okay, and that is why we have a term called half-life. I have given the example of all this with the automotive engine example, with certain tuned component bearing related example in the last class. Okay, so please recall that. If forgot, you may revisit that lecture and listen back maybe after this class again. Okay, fine. Then we were at this particular slide when we ended our lecture. In this graph, you can observe various material stress strain relationship has been shown. You can see here aluminium alloy 2024, aluminium alloy 7074, then Manton steel, one of the high strength steel, strength to weight ratio is much better in Manton steel, high manganese steel. We have standard alloy steel SAE 4340. Again, it is high strength hard material, commonly EN 24. Okay, in EN standard we call EN 24. The alloy combination is 0.4% carbon, nickel, molybdenum and chromium. So carbon is there, chromium, nickel, molybdenum. So all these are major alloying elements apart from silicon, manganese and other minor impurities. Okay, this is what is standard. Other steels of related similar grade you have SAE or ASI 4140. This is 4140 is chromium molybdenum steel. Nickel will not be there. 4340 nickel will also be there in addition. So high strength alloy steels with the medium carbon percentage, 0.4% carbon, both of these. Okay, here alternate is E19 in Euro standard, European standard, EN19, we say EN19 category, this particular steel. So all these alloy steels, usually of this particular category, we can observe here the monotonic stress strain behavior. In SOM lab, what you test, simple tension test, you can observe here the line which I am marking with red color is for a static test. So this is a static test, static stress, stress versus strain graph. What you observe under the cyclic loading, if you apply the fatigue load, under fatigue loading, you observe the material stress strain response is totally different. It is totally different and much lower than the tensile. And you see these steel 4340, 4140 steel is used in the most of the structural applications where fatigue is one of the governing failure factor. Most of the mechanical components which require high strength, shafts, bearings, tools, various toolings, tool heads, most of the rotatory members are all made by these particular steels, alloy steels. When the strength of a steel is required much higher and cost is not an issue, we can go to these alloy steels. If cost is an issue, we have to go with the medium to high carbon steel to attain somewhat balanced or what is a optimized strength with the cost, because plain carbon steels are plain carbon, I may write plain carbon. So this is another alternative which are again prone to the fatigue compared to plain carbon steel, whether medium or high carbon. Alloy steels are better, but at the meantime cost is also more. So here one more category steel is shown. So this is again another steel. This is also one of the high strength steel, itself. Okay, but the alloying elements like chromium, nickel, molybdenum are not there much. This is moreover basic carbon, around about 0.35 to 0.4% carbon, and then silicon, manganese. These are all the other major alloying elements in this particular steel. So it is also medium carbon steel. But here you observe the cyclic behavior. Initially, material undergoes cyclic hardening. And then material undergo, here this one is monotonic, red color monotonic. The other one, I may have to change color. Okay. The other curve here, blue color line, is a cyclic. So initially it is undergoing cyclic softening compared to the monotonic, and after sufficient yielding, the material is undergoing hardening behavior. You can see mixed mode. So this steel shows mixed mode of behavior, whereas alloy steel you can see cyclic softening phenomena. Okay, so these are steel. Only two steels have been shown here just for comparison. Okay, how you can make out, compare. So now you think there is more than 1,000 category of steels available. Then each steel, how it behaves, is very tedious job to understand. Lot of data, lot of work, lot of research you have to read, collect those data if it is available in open domain. Suppose you do not have open domain, then you have to do the test in your laboratory and you have to determine all those things. Okay. Now let us go to the alloy, the softest alloy, aluminum alloy. You see aluminum alloy 2024. and aluminum 7075. Most often used again for the structural components in aircraft industry, where high strength is demanded but not the weight. Weight has to be less. High strength to weight ratio is required. These are the commonly used structural elements. Okay, and you can observe the rate at which cyclic hardening is going on and cyclic softening. Here, either case cyclic hardening is there. You can observe here. Okay, so now if you think a general trend that soft alloys undergo cyclic hardening, you can observe that phenomena here. Compared to monotonic behavior, when you apply cyclic load, you can observe material is getting hardened. In contrast to that, if hard material, you see here titanium alloy, or wasp alloy, age hardened nickel alloy, wasp alloy, a specific category, super alloy. So these are super alloy, nickel alloys. Again used in the aircraft industries, titanium and nickel, highly used, costly, much costlier alloys compared to aluminum alloy, where aluminum strength is limited. But titanium and nickel can give better hardness, high strength alloys. These materials you observe how it is going to behave. Two high strength alloys, titanium and nickel. So titanium alloy you can observe compared with the monotonic curve, how the behavior is changing, how the behavior is varying. Okay. Whereas nickel alloy, it is undergoing cyclic hardening. It is harder alloy, but under cyclic load, it is further undergoing hardening compared to the monotonic behavior. Titanium alloy, you see, initially it is softening and then it is getting hardened. So now you will have a rough idea that straightforward coming to a conclusion just by looking into the material strength and material hardness is not enough to decide whether the component is undergoing cyclic softening or cyclic hardening. You see all those metals graph I have provided here with this slide. It is not that easy for an engineer to predict. You should have some reliable data to understand the material behavior under cyclic loads. Okay, we have some general guidelines. We do have, as we have discussed earlier, but there is no guarantee that those rules are to be used always. In general, in the absence of data, we follow those rules. We look for what is the n value, strain hardening exponent. Based on that, we can decide. Or we may take stress, ultimate stress to the yield stress ratio, and that we may compare with the standard, and we may say that the material is going to cyclically harden or soften. But in practical reality, it depending on several factors, starting from the chemical composition of the material to the applied load and the internal structure of the material. Okay. So this cyclic hardening and cyclic softening, I already explained about all this with the graph. So these are all the similar parameters. Low strength, when it is going to harden or soften, all this is okay. Monotonic stress strain curve, this is also we already discussed. Ramberg-Osgood relationship, N, this is all okay. Linearly elastic material, in reality will not get linearly elastic material, to be specific. Even though we say steel is showing you linearly elastic region, it is very difficult to have exact linearity, but whatever the variation is there, it is somewhat ignorable, especially for all the metals and corresponding alloys. A negligible difference is there. Therefore, Hooke's law prevails. Within elastic limit, we say there is a linear behavior. And elastic, perfectly made plastic materials are also very difficult in reality, but we can assume based on our several assumptions that we say metal is homogeneous, metal is isotropic. In reality, there is no homogeneous material, no isotropic material we can make unless and until for a laboratory use, uh, which is constructed under from nano level with the severe care in a specified environment without any defect, anything. But it is possible only to a small case, maybe for the test case or maybe a small element for a sensor at micron level. Only those cases. For us, engineering point of view, the fatigue point of view and all, we talk at bulk scale, macro scale level. Then constructing a uniform grain material, constructing single crystalline material, homogeneous, isotropic material, that is nowhere a reality. But our general understanding that most often this variation, the degree of variation in directional properties or the composition for metals and alloys is moreover agreeable. It is quite negligible when we talk with the macroscopic level, macroscopic structural level property variation. That property is a average property. We say strength, stress, strains. These are all average parameters. Microscopic level we go, then these differences are significant. Okay. Uh, if in the absence of cyclic properties, we can even assume the properties of a monotonic curve. That is a general practice which is found in the industry also. But we have to carefully know that as a designer, uh, the, assuming monotonic properties instead of the cyclic properties is not a best recommended path. It can give you approximate result, not the actual behavior. That may be clear to you by now after looking into those graphs. If you have used the monotonic curve properties to solve the fatigue problem, in reality, the material was undergoing either cyclically hardening, where you are underestimating the material strength, if you use the monotonic case, or the material may be undergoing cyclical softening where you are overestimating the material strength if you consider the monotonic case. So cyclic behavior is totally different than the monotonic behavior. If you get a metal which shows you the identical behavior under monotonic load and under cyclic load, then it is fine. Then it is fine. Okay. However, most often we do not have cyclic stress strain relationship properties. In that case, we may assume to come to a particular conclusion. We have to get some solution. So what engineer can do if there is no data? Engineer has to work with the available data. That is what engineers do. Okay. So with the available data, we have to proceed, but with the caution. We have to always keep in mind up to what level the design could be reliable. That statement always we have to keep in mind when we work with the approximate data. Okay. Then about the sequence effect. So sequence effect we have already discussed in the fatigue, high cycle fatigue chapter. Same figures, same explanation. Here also it is there. Okay. You can only state in terms of strain rather than stress. So this I will leave it to you. I have already explained all these combinations under the high cycle fatigue chapter. So all same explanation. This you can read as it is. Fine. We will look into here the mean stress effect. Mean stress effect. Okay. In case of high cycle fatigue, the stress range or the load what we apply is quite small. We operate in the elastic region. That is why high life, long life, high cycle fatigue as an approach. Plastic deformations are very, very small. We are not operating into that region. But when we talk about low cycle fatigue, the applied load or the stress developed in the material is quite larger. Okay, there is plasticity coming into the picture. Now, again, relate to your monotonic tensile test. You can see once metal yields, at that particular time, the stress in the metal gets released. So ultimately, it is the Newton's law. You are doing some work on the material, and material start to resist it to some extent. That is the stress. Resistance offered to the applied load, or resistance offered to deformation, is stress. Now you have applied a load such that, or you have done the work on the material such that the material underwent the deformation. Then the amount of deformation it underwent is, you have done work on the material. That particular deformation, when it is happened, then some stress gets released, because some amount of the applied load is underwent in deforming the material. Definition of stress is deformation to the physical meaning. Forget about load upon area. Don't give me that definition. I already said that. It is only true in an axial case, specific case. This you have to always remember. Okay. So the resistance, internal resistance offered by the body to deformation is now, if there is a deformation, then internal resistance offered by the body is going to relax. So this is our general observation. So what happens in case of strain control test when there is a mean type of strain loading? You can observe here mean type of strain loading. We have the mean strain, constant strain, which is there in the material. So similar to our discussion, various type of load patterns we had in earlier chapters. Here also you have different type of strain cycles you can apply now. You can apply completely reverse strain amplitude. You can apply completely reversed. Okay. You can apply strain amplitude may be repeated strain amplitude. So for example, the first one is plus 0.1 to minus 0.1. This cycle you are repeating. Here it is starting from 0 to some epsilon max, let us say 0.2, some 0 to maximum, you are pulling, you are releasing, you are pulling and you are releasing. This can be on the other side also, compression side also. Or we can have a load which is larger in the tension amplitude, little bit in the compression side. Larger in the tension side, smaller zone in the compression. But there is now some mean. So this is a case of loading what is shown here. Or we can have tension itself. Tension loading. Again with the mean. We have epsilon max. We have epsilon minimum. So our stress ratio, what we used to call in the high cycle fatigue, R, where it is sigma max by sigma minimum. Now the same we can do here also with the strain, epsilon max by epsilon minimum, epsilon max by epsilon minimum. If it is completely reversed, R value becomes minus 1. In the first case, plus 0.1, minus 0.1, R value minus 1. If it is sum maximum by 0, then you have R value 0 here for repeated loading. If in a load based or stress control test, we say this is stress ratio. Now it is a strain ratio. Okay. So mean type of strain amplitudes you can always apply. All that type of loading is there. Okay. Don't think that only in the stress cycle such loading is there. Everywhere it is possible. Any type of, whether it is shear also, whether it is compression, whether it is tension, all the type of loading scenarios, it is possible to have various type of load cycles or load histories. So here you can observe in this figure, a mean type of strain amplitude has been applied. A mean type of strain amplitude has been applied. Some R value, some value X has been applied. some minus x maybe, if this is minus epsilon minimum, minus less than 0, compression, and this epsilon max is tension. Okay. Now what happens? Mean means that much strain has to be constantly maintained. Mean in the sense that much strain has to be constantly maintained in the component. Okay. Then over that we are applying the alternating strain component. The same equations what we have written earlier for stress, same is we can write here. Sigma strain amplitude epsilon max minus epsilon minimum by 2. That is the strain amplitude, or delta epsilon by 2. We can write in this fashion. Okay. Similarly, we can write for the mean. Epsilon mean is average, sigma max plus sigma minimum by 2, mean strain, and alternating component of the strain. Okay. So because of the mean strain, there exists initially some mean stress sigma. Okay, sigma mean. Now, when we are applying sigma A over the mean loading, it undergoes some plastic deformation, and whatever the mean stress is there, you can see cycle by cycle the mean stress is getting relaxed, not the mean strain. Okay, there is no meaning to say mean strain is getting relaxed. Mean stress, so don't get confused with the residual stress. That is different concept. Residual stresses, this is stress arised because of the mean load. That is what is mean stress. Earlier in high cycle fatigue, we had various mean stress correction criteria, Goodman, Gerber criteria, Morrow criteria, etc. Okay. Here also we have different life predicting equations in the strain life approach, that later part we'll see. So what we observe here in case of strain control test, when we apply a strain based load with the mean stress developed in the component is going to relax cycle by cycle. Okay, cycle by cycle, and this is purely depending on only on the plastic strain component. You have some mean over which you are applying some strain amplitude. Now the strain amplitude is a combination of elastic and plastic, because we know total strain is epsilon E plus plastic strain. This is what is our equation, sigma by E plus sigma by K to the power 1 by N, Ramberg-Osgood equation, or if you put dash, it becomes the cyclic stress strain equation. Total strain. So total strain is nothing but the strain amplitude, epsilon A. In that, only the plastic part, when stress gets released in the material, when there is plastic deformation. If there is no plastic deformation, there is no relaxation. Okay. So this is one of the important thing you have to always remember. When you apply certain mean stress developing load, and if you are controlling the strain, then the mean stress will get relaxed if there is significant plastic strain. And since here in this chapter we are discussing with respect to low cycle fatigue, LCF, low cycle fatigue, that means we are operating in the high stress zone or high load zone, high cyclic strain amplitude we are applying, which can cause significant plastic deformation. Okay. Low cycle fatigue, the component life is low, and in this case high loads are there. 3 times I asked the same question in the objective quiz. Still many people have made the same mistakes. Last class I have highlighted about that. Okay. So low cycle, if you want to get the low life, then obviously applied load must be more. We are operating at high stress values, high load values, or high strain values in the low cycle fatigue regime. there is significant plastic stress, plastic strains, okay. And that plastic strains is going to cause the stress relaxation, the mean stress relaxation. This means that in low cycle fatigue, effect of mean stress is almost negligible or very low. Effect of mean stress is low in case of high cycle fatigue. In case of low cycle fatigue. But in case of high cycle fatigue, chapter 2, SN approach, the mean stress are going to have significant effect. Why? Mean stress are not getting relaxed if the stress range is elastic in nature. You can observe in this equation only the plastic part controls the effect of mean stress. In SN approach, there is no plastic part at all. We are only talking with the elastic region. We are only modeled the equation itself. The Baskin equation itself is measure only the elastic part. There is no provision to consider the plasticity in the high cycle fatigue. That is why if we use the strain life approach in the high cycle fatigue region, we can get little bit more accurate result than SN approach, because though the plastic effect is very small in high cycle fatigue region, it is having that small effect, at least that small effect in the plastic region. In the high cycle fatigue region, the plastic stress strains are having some small effect. So as we go higher and higher life cycle, then the effect of the plasticity of the material comes down. Therefore, SN approach and the strain life approach may give you close by results. As we come towards the low number of cycle lives, significantly large stress amplitudes or significantly large strain amplitudes or significantly large load is applied on the component, there is considerable plastic effect in the material, and that is going to cause different effect behavior of the material. So if there is a mean stress is going to relax. Mean stress is going to relax, but applied stress itself is a max. Alternating stress only is much higher. Therefore, life is small. We may ask, if mean stress is getting relaxed, then why component fails early? Now, component may not fail only because of mean stress. Component is also undergoing alternating cyclic stress. Okay, so this understanding we should have. So as we come towards the low cycle fatigue region, in this equation sigma by epsilon, the effect of this becomes less, and effect of the plastic parameter k to the power 1 by n, this parameter, the plastic zone influence is high. Plastic zone influence becomes moreover high. Therefore, in the low cycle fatigue region, we cannot use the SN approach. SN approach is modeled only for the elastic case. Okay, and if you use high cycle fatigue SN approach in the low cycle fatigue region, you will get a totally disastrous result, totally wrong result. If you are planning for low cycle fatigue, go for strain life approach. If you can attempt the fracture mechanics approach, which we have to cover later half of the syllabus, for the low cycle fatigue region, it is best. So fracture mechanics approach is known to give you the much better approximation than the these SN approach or the strain life approach equations. If not fracture approach, because it has its own limitations, the data and other parameters with the fracture mechanics. At least strain life approach, this can be adopted in the low cycle fatigue region. If you use strain life approach in high cycle fatigue region, no problem. You can use that. Definitely you can use that, and you get much more accurate result than SN approach. Then you have to decide as a designer whether using strain life approach in high cycle fatigue region is worth for you, for the effort, for the money, for the time invested into that, or not. That you have to see. That you have to compare with the accuracy of the solution, strain life approach and the high cycle fatigue approach, and you have to decide which can give you whether the improvement in the result you obtain in the high cycle fatigue regime by applying strain life approach is significant or not. Based on that, you decide whether to use or not. But low cycle fatigue, it is straightforward. Definitely SN approach not possible because of the mathematical modeling itself is not governing the plastic effect. And in the low cycle fatigue, there is significant plastic effect. Okay. So that is about relaxation of the mean stress in case of strain control. All the explanation, the point what I mentioned is just written in statements here. You can read it from your handouts. Handouts I already shared long back. So same points are there. You can read it there. Importantly, you make a note that the amount of relaxation, the amount of or the rate at which mean stress is getting relaxed, it depending on the magnitude of the plastic strain amplitude, magnitude of plastic strain. See, make a note of this. Plastic strain, not total strain, not elastic strain part. So whatever relaxation happens, depending on the plastic strain amplitude in the applied strain load. Okay. So all other points are quite straightforward. So important point to note, the mean strain. Mean strain. Earlier in high cycle fatigue, we saw mean stress, Goodman-Gerber criteria. Their effect was significant. In case of low cycle fatigue, the mean strain effect. I am not writing here mean stress. Please don't think mean stress. The effect of mean strain in a strain control test. Okay. Which means the strain which is going to give you the mean stress. That is true. It is there. This effect of this mean strain or the effect of the mean stress created because of the mean strain does not usually affect much, does not usually affect, usually but not always. This we have to be very careful with. Okay. Does not usually affect the fatigue behavior unless and until it results in a non-fully relaxed mean stresses. If the applied mean strain relaxes the corresponding stresses, then it will not affect. But if the applied mean stress, that magnitude of the applied mean strain is such that the developed mean stresses are not fully relaxed, then mean strain effect is significant. This you have to remember clearly. Okay. So here in this figure, which I explained earlier, you can see the stress is going to be relaxed continuously and then it is becoming moreover constant, steady. You see now, mean stress is not relaxed fully. Some amount of mean stress is there. Though the rate of relaxation is very important, it depending on the magnitude of the plastic strain. After several cycles, you can see here slope is almost zero or infinity. Delta y is zero. Okay. Uh, Sorry, not infinity. 0 by delta x. 0. Correct, no? Okay. So slope of the this line, slope of straight line is infinity. 0 by divide. How it is? 0 is in the denominator is 0. Who can comment on this? Anyone? Nobody is there? Yes, please. Math student.
Sir, it's delta x by 0, sir.
Huh. Slope is delta y. So if below it is 0, then it is 0, no?
Below it is, sir, if it is 0 on the top, the numerator, then it is 0. It's the other way around, no, sir.
Okay, okay. Delta x by delta y, huh?
Delta
No,
y
we
by
know.
delta x itself, sir. But if we want infinity in the answer, then we need 0 in the bottom. Actually, it is not indeterminate, basically.
Okay, fine, correct. Okay. Here delta y is not there. Delta x is there, which is straightforward. Okay. The stress is the line becoming straighter. So it is a slope of a straight line. Okay. You may assume in that way. So here there is mean stress. So when the effect of mean stress is not significant, only if this mean stress is getting relaxed in case of strain control test. That is what is this statement. Okay. Each statement has got a meaning. This is what you have to be carefully aware of. Okay, fine. These are all points which I have explained already. You read it. Any doubts, anything is there, you ask me even later. These are all points I have given in your handouts. Okay. Here you can observe the effect of various R value. That means strain amplitude with some mean. Strain amplitude with some mean. I have already shown you various graphs earlier. We have the strain, isn't it? R value minus 2. R value minus 2. So you have the stress amplitude sigma max, I mean strain amplitude here, sigma max, which is half of the epsilon minimum, sorry, epsilon max, which is half of the epsilon minimum. Okay, so R value is minus 2. If you have another load where you have sigma max, epsilon max and epsilon minimum, the maximum strain amplitude and the minimum strain amplitude same. If you have strain amplitude 0 to maximum, 0 to maximum, that is R value 0. This is R value 0 type of loading, R value minus 1, R value minus 2, and finally some other tensile load where we have the larger denominator, that means epsilon minimum and epsilon max ratios, maybe R value 0.5. You can consider tension, any magnitude, any magnitude which can give me this particular combination of ratio. Okay, so this is what is the meaning of this set of data. R minus 2 minus 1 means that type of strain amplitude has been applied on the component. Then how the life is varied. Earlier we used to write SN diagram, log life, and this is stress, either log or semi-log plot we can draw, stress amplitude, and we used to have a curve, SN diagram, we used to say SN diagram, correct? Same way, in case of strain life approach, we can construct strain life diagram. You can see here now strain amplitude, not stress amplitude. Strain amplitude. Okay. Please remember, y-axis becomes strain amplitude. This diagram is epsilon, that is strain life diagram. Similar to SN diagram where it is stress life, now it is strain life diagram. Okay. So similar to the SN curve, you will get the curves here. Similar to the diagram, you will get the curves here. Okay. You can observe the curves, but these curves are now drawn for different strain ratios. You can observe if the applied strain is fully tensile in nature, that is R value 0.5. Tensile, tension type of strain is applied compared to the completely reversed or compression type of strain life diagram. You can see the life has been significantly decreased. Life is decreased, you can say, or you may say in other words that to obtain the same life, the amplitude you can apply is quite less. Okay, you can observe clearly the difference for different strain ratios. So this indicates the nature of strain amplitude you apply do matter in determining the life. So mean stress effect is there. Okay, so this is very important to understand. Strain life diagram similar to the stress life diagram, and depending on the strain ratios similar to that we discuss in the high cycle fatigue stress ratio do matter, do shift the strain life diagram. Completely reverse strain life diagram is one. Then any tensile mean stress type of strain range you are applying, and if that strain range cannot relax fully the mean stress, then that effect is significant, and we can observe that the life is getting shortened for a said strain amplitude. Or to obtain a same life with different loads, you have to alter the corresponding strain amplitudes. Okay. Then comes the residual stress effect. Now residual stress effect, again the discussion is same what we had in the high cycle fatigue life approach. Generally, it is considered that compressive mean stresses are improving the fatigue life. It is well known fact, compressive material, provided the applied load is tensile in nature. So please remember this also. This is a clause. Only in this case, now your application is compression loads based and you already have compression residual stresses in your component, then it is not good. In that case, you should have tensile mean stress in the component if your application is compressive load based. Okay. If your application is tensile load based, then you can have the if your application is tensile load, then you can have the compressive mean stress in the component, which can enhance the life of the component. Okay. So all other things are known. Important is to induce the residual stresses. If the residual stresses are beneficial, then we should think about how to retain the residual stresses in the component. So there are many parameters to be talked when we talk about the residual stresses. What is the magnitude of the residual stress you can achieve in the component? What is the distribution of the residual stress you can achieve along three directions, X, Y, and Z direction? Each of the methods which can produce the residual stress can give you only certain limit of the residual stresses and certain level of distribution. Okay. So there are mechanical methods like short peening. You may be aware, short peening. In the first chapter we had this word, I have told there. You can have deep rolling. There are several other methods. We have laser shock peening. Several modern methods are there. Thermal methods, especially carburizing or case hardening methods. Case hardening methods or hardening, or I can say quenching. Hardening treatment, hardening and tempering together we have to do. Hardening means nothing but quenching. This can create the residual stresses in the component. You have various plating techniques, coating techniques, surface alloying, change of composition, surface composition. Machining also can induce various type of machining, you know. That also can induce the residual stresses. But question here is to ask whether they create compressive residual stress or tensile residual stress. This is important to say. Suppose you are performing a milling operation, let us say just a facing operation you are doing over a milling machine. Facing operation can create tensile residual stresses in the top layers, few micron top layer, only for the few micron level. It is not that throughout the component these stresses are there. These residual stresses could be in the entire bulk component or could be at the surface. If you are talking about facing operation, the surface layers may have a small amount of tensile residual stresses. So then there are several research articles you can even find on the study what is the level of tensile residual stresses are there on the surface. Then after performing the treatment to remove the tensile stresses and impart compressive residual stresses, which is good, which is better. Okay. So these discussions are also there. Okay. Hardening, tempering or quenching can create bulk residual stresses throughout the component also, or maybe up to certain region. Why here residual stresses? You see, when you heat a component to certain temperature till it attains all austenitic phase, and then you are suddenly cooling it by putting in cold water bath or oil bath, whatever, depending on your requirement. What happens? The outermost surface which is coming in contact with the cold water suddenly start to solidify. And as you go inside, the solidification takes little bit more time. So there is uneven cooling, and the outer solidified grains will not allow the inner solidification to do that homogenized solidification. And the martensitic phase is known to have little bit higher volume than the austenitic phase. So inner core start to try to expand, outer already solidified region try to compress that or close that envelope, so that internal jugular is there between the layers of fully solidified outer region, and now trying to solidify that particular region, and finally when it solidifies, there exist internal stresses. This is the way we create internal stresses. And many a time you may see the component is getting cracking. Hardened component or quench components are developing cracks. That is why tempering operation is later done to adjust all that and to relieve some amount of stresses. That is one example. There are several examples are there with various type of heat treatments. Deep rolling operation, surface treating method. These are the surface treating methods. So short peening, surface treating, laser shock peening. Nowadays we have other surface alloying techniques. SMAT is there, laser cladding is there. There are several techniques are available. These are all employed to make a surface as required for the application. And in the process of improving the surface properties, it is not that only aesthetic is improved or only surface finish is improved. This is also you have to be carefully consider. It is not that only surface roughness or surface finish we are improving or reducing the surface roughness to get the smooth surface by the surface treatments. Surface treatments nowadays, and especially now in the modern current era, are done not only for the surface finish but also to improve the surface hardness and to induce the corresponding residual stresses as well as the microstructural changes or tailored properties at the surface. Okay. Then there are several parameters, controlling parameters, that is all additional. As it is not a scope, I will not highlight all that here, and you may not get all those details, but at least you have some idea about this. We have several methods of inducing the residual stresses. As far as our course is there, I limit our discussion to here itself. I will not go much inside this topic. One, two examples just to give you some idea about that I have told. Okay. I can talk more on short pinning, deep rolling. Well, that is the area I'm working with. Mechanical surface treatments. We can talk a lot on that. Maybe whoever interested, you can approach personally to seek more information on those residual stress inducing methods and how that particular residual stresses, the amount of cold work, the tailored microstructure, how it can enhance the fatigue life of a component. That we can discuss only if those are interested. Additional lecture you want I can give, but not during the regular class. Okay. Fine. Now we know that there is monotonic stress strain curve, okay, which you have done from your strength of material laboratory testing. You know that there is a cyclic stress strain curve which is different from the monotonic stress strain curve. Okay. So this is what you have to remember. Then let us see how to obtain the monotonic stress strain, this cyclic stress strain curve. So cyclic stress strain curve can be above this monotonic, if it is cyclically hardening. It can be below this monotonic stress strain curve. It can be same, or it can show you the mixed behavior. So these are all various possibilities. How this CSS is obtained, cyclic stress strain curve, I have already highlighted since last two classes. We have to obtain stabilized hysteresis loops. Multiple stabilized hysteresis loops, various hysteresis loops, and then we have to connect the tip of this hysteresis curve to get the corresponding CSSC tip of this. You see, this is the CSSC curve. Okay. So CSSC means cyclic stress strain curve. We have already discussed about that. Now let us look into various methods of determining this. You know monotonic stress strain curve, how to obtain strength of material lab. You imagine you know how to do the static tensile test in UTM, universal tensing machine, basic. But cyclic stress strain curve, you might have the opinion now, you have understood that you have to apply cyclic load. Okay, you have to apply cyclic load is fine. Then what? Then you have to get the stabilized hysteresis loop. Now what you have understood by your previous learning, to obtain the stabilized hysteresis loop, you should spend 20 to 40% of the load cycles. Or we will, to be on the safer side, we say 50% or half-life to get the stabilized loop, Or else what happen? As soon as you start to load the component, we have seen that phenomena. Initial first cycle loading, you reached here. Then you have released, went back, you reached somewhere here. And again you are coming back, you will not reach to the same point. You may be reached here. You are going next, you may be reached here. So like this loop will come. It will not be stabilized. Every cycle, the stress and strain response is going on varying. Every cycle, the stress strain response changes. We should get this stabilized. Once it is stabilized, we have the stress strain response same loop. Now after that, with the same loop, it will move unless and until the magnitude has been changed for the next loading pattern. So we have to get the stabilized loop. So these loops will not help us in getting the CSSC. We have to obtain the stabilized loop. And that stabilized loop tips must be connected to obtain the cyclic stress strain curve. To obtain the stabilized hysteresis curve, there are several methods. One method is known as constant amplitude test or the companion method. Here we need to have several series of specimens. Now having several series of specimens is again a lot of problem. With the single specimen only can we do? With that intention, there are another two methods. Multiple step method, where single specimen is used, or incremental step method. Okay, let us see what are these test steps. These are the physical tests. If you want to obtain the cyclic stress strain behavior, now you know what is the importance of cyclic strain curve. Why you need to know the cyclic behavior? Because material do respond differently under monotonic load and under cyclic load. Okay, so now you must, let us say you want to obtain the cyclic stress strain curve. There are three methods. These three methods are there. Let us look into what are these three methods, how to conduct test by using these three methods. So first one, constant amplitude method, which require multiple specimens. Okay, what we do here, you take a specimen, maybe axial fatigue. Okay, axial fatigue, same way specimen what you have prepared for the tension test. Specimen preparation is same way. As per the ASTM standard, you prepare finishing. So the specimen you have. Start loading it cyclically. And continuously monitor the stress strain response. Okay. Once you get the stabilized loop, so let us say I am applying a strain value. Plus 0.1 to minus 0.1. So I pull for plus 0.1, then we'll compress for the minus 0.1. That means R value minus 1. Stress ratio minus, strain ratio minus 1. Okay. Do under this strain amplitude, obtain the stress value and strain value till you get a constant. There is no change with stress and strain relationship. Stabilized final stress strain response. Once it is done, that forms your first point in the curve. For 0.01 strain, 0.1 positive strain, you have some corresponding stress which is a fixed value. For minus 0.1, you have again a fixed value. Then with this strain amplitude, every time you pull, you are going to get the same loop again. Then remove that specimen. That specimen job is done. Now take new specimen. Take one more specimen. Okay. Take a new specimen. Okay. Now apply same way. Same way. Next, increase the strain amplitude. Maybe earlier you have started with the 0.1. Next, you start with the 0.2, plus or minus 0.2. So 0.2 here, 0.2 here. Okay. Start the test. Still, you will overcome the cyclic hardening, cyclic softening phenomena. You get the constant loop. Till you get the constant loop, carry out this. So like this, you do for n number of samples, at least 100 samples minimum. That is recommended in order to overcome the various uncertainties. At least 100 samples we have to test like this till we get the stabilized loop and then connect the tip of all these stabilized loops. So multiple specimen and you go on doing the test with different strain rates. Obtain the corresponding stress strain response. Connect the tip of the hysteresis, stabilized hysteresis loop. This is constant amplitude test or companion method. Another method here is a incremental step method. Here only one specimen used, only one specimen. Okay. Here what is done is the strain amplitude. You start with some small 0.1, go to 0.15, go to 0.2, go on increasing the strain amplitude up to, let us say, some defined value. It depending on the what is the maybe strain at plastic stress, I mean the ultimate stress, the plastic strain at ultimate stress, or the maybe some factor lesser than the true fracture strain. Depending on the requirement, you consider a maximum value. And maybe the elastic strain, the elastic limit strain you consider as your basic value. From there you start. So start from there, that amplitude, go on increasing in incremental steps till you attain the maximum. Come back with the same steps of decrementation. Okay, decrease the magnitude with the same test till you reach to your lower value. Again from there increase with the same incremental steps and then come down with the decremental steps. Only one cycle, one cycle. Apply 0 to 0.1, then once 0.1 full cycle is over, apply 0.1, 0.1 maximum, 0.1 minimum, one cycle. Then go to 0.15 maximum, 0.15 minimum. Then go to next 0.2 maximum, 0.2 minimum. Then go to 0.25, next negative 2.5. So like this is what is this pattern. Okay. Apply up to the maximum value which you have predetermined by considering some factor, maybe 0.9 times of the true fracture strain, or for that material from the monotonic load you have true fracture strain, 0.9 times of that, 0.8 times of that, depending on your standard, what you want, depending on the material. Okay. Then come back to the zero value. Okay. And then this step you have to repeat n number of times till you get the stabilized hysteresis loop every time. So for one cycle you will get one stabilized, one loop. For next cycle you will get one more loop. Okay. For next increment you will get one more loop. For one more increment you get next loop. So like this till you get the stabilized loops, or else what happens, starting from the beginning, the stabilized loop magnitude will go on varying. For your strain amplitude, the stress will not be constant. Stress, every time you get different stresses for a defined strain value. But once you attain the same stress value again and again, that means you will come to know now you have achieved the stabilized performance. There, what is the value of stress strain you take, construct the loops and then simply connect the tip of this loop to obtain the CSSC. This is incremental step method. Okay, you are increasing the strain values from some minimum to some maximum depending on the material, depending on the predetermined value as per the standard we are conducting the test. Okay, you have to do this, increase the strain amplitude till that predetermined value, then decrease to the predetermined lower, again increase from there, decrease. So this load sequence you have to repeat n number of times. So here you can see block 1 to block 9, block 17 are shown here. Then further, till you obtain the stabilized loop, you have to use this method. Okay. Once you get that, you plot the CSSC diagram. This is incremental step method. The another method here is a multiple step method, similar to increment, but what happens is here, in case of multiple step method, again it is a single specimen. What you do is start with some low strain amplitude, maybe strain amplitude just at the boundary of elastic plastic region. Okay, maybe I will give one example here with 0.1. So this 0.1 cycles you apply till you get stabilized hysteresis loop on the single specimen, same specimen, single specimen, take a fresh specimen, apply this 0.1 amplitude load till you get stabilized hysteresis loop for this magnitude. Stabilized hysteresis loop for this magnitude. Earlier, with the first method, companion method, we used to remove this sample from the testing machine and bring a new specimen and then apply next magnitude. Here, in the multiple step method, on the same specimen, now once you have the stabilized hysteresis loop for 0.1 loading, plus or minus 0.1, next you increase the strain amplitude on the same specimen. On the same specimen, increase the strain amplitude. This axis is strain. This is time. Okay. So maybe this maximum minima, I will say plus or minus 0.2. Apply this loading till you get the stabilized hysteresis loop. Okay. After that, again increase the magnitude. Again increase the magnitude. Here, maybe now we are going with plus or minus 3 strain. Epsilon max to epsilon minimum. Okay. So like this, you can do till you want some factor of the true strain value or till the component maximum strain you can apply on that. Up to that level, you can go on doing this to obtain the stabilized hysteresis loops. So you compare this now incremental step method. In incremental step method and here the steps chosen are same, but the difference is in incremental step method 0.1 to reach up to some predetermined level. Here maybe 1.5. So 0.1 to 1.5 to reach to that level, go on increasing till that level, go on decreasing with the same steps. Then again go on increasing, go on decreasing. This is incremental method. In multiple step method, one magnitude you first take, finish that till you get stabilized hysteresis loop, then apply the next magnitude, increase the magnitude till you get the stabilized hysteresis loop, then go and apply the next on the same component. So hysteresis loop, this along the x-axis it is epsilon, along the y-axis it is sigma. So earlier for 0.1, you will get a stabilized hysteresis loop. Next for the 0.2, you will get the next hysteresis loop. Okay. So like this, for each you go on constructing the hysteresis loops. Okay. Go on constructing the hysteresis loop and then simply connect the tip of all the hysteresis loops to obtain the CSSC curve. This is CSSC. CSSC is only stress strain response curve obtained through hysteresis diagram. Okay. Any doubts in these three methods? Obtaining the CSSC curve, cyclic stress strain response. There are three methods. You can follow any in the laboratory if you want to conduct the test. Okay. Since you are not used to this, I just explained the various tests to you. Okay. So these are all we have already discussed. The Ramberg-Osgood relations, how to obtain all that, plastic part. Okay. Total strain is elastic plus plastic. That is it. That is what is written. Expression for plastic from the Mason's hypothesis we have. Okay. Here you see dash symbol, dash for the CSSC. If the cyclic stress strain curve is there, we indicate dash symbol. All this I have already highlighted. I will not therefore I will not again and again explain much here. Just I am recalling what I have explained earlier. Okay. So this cyclic strain hardening exponent usually lies in this range, 0.1 to 0.25. This is known by the Manson's work, okay, with several number of samples, lot of test data available in the open domain. We are writing this. There could be material where this cyclic hardening exponent value could be sometimes even 0.08 also, sometimes even 0.28 also. Okay, that range is possible, but not much data is available. Based on much data, we assume that the n dash value, the cyclic strain hardening exponent value lies between this range. Earlier we had when n value is 0.2, we say material is to cyclically harden. When n value is 0.1, we used to say material is cyclically soften. So these are nothing but the two extreme ranges usually we find. Okay, most of the steel material the n value is 0.18. Most of the steel material the n value remains to be 0.18. This is just for your information. In the absence of data, you may assume this 0.18 or 0.19 here. Okay. In a complete absence, you assume the value of n, k and n, strength coefficient and cyclic hardening exponent for the monotonic case. Monotonic case. Okay. Remember, this is for the monotonic case. Monotonic case. If it is cyclic case, you can see here K dash N dash symbols have been used. Cyclic, cyclic. Okay. Then you substitute in the total strain equation, elastic part, plastic part, same way as that of Ramberg-Osgood equation. So I have already explained this difference. Therefore, I will straightforward move forward. The graph, this graph is also already explained. For different material, it is shown. N dash 0.01 here for SAE 0.11 for SAE 4340 steel. For aluminum, it is shown as 0.14. Okay. Yeah, hysteresis loop equation also we have already discussed in our previous class. So finally, there are three equations you have to remember. One is hysteresis loop equation, one is Ramberg-Osgood equation, and next one is a CSS equation or Ramberg-Osgood type of equation. So this we will take up in next class, next further equations and all. Remember the three equations from the discussions. Since last two classes I have been highlighting about this. One is Ramberg-Osgood equation. It is there in your data book. No need to by heart, but you should understand its meaning. Ramberg-Osgood equation, sigma by E, elastic part, plus the plastic part, sigma by K, 1 by N. Now this equation is of the monotonic load stress strain diagram. Monotonic load stress strain diagram. Monotonic case. Then we have CSSC equation, sigma by E, same fashion as that of Ramberg-Osgood. Therefore, it is known to be Ramberg-Osgood type of equation. But we apply the properties of the CSSC curve. So that equation is for the CSSC curve. Let us say the material is cyclically softening, then this is the CSSC curve. Okay, cyclic stress strain curve. Its property, its equation is this. Apart from that, we have the hysteresis loops. For the hysteresis loop, we talk with the range delta epsilon by 2. Then the equation is delta sigma by 2E, elastic part, and delta sigma by 2K to the power 1 by n. Okay. Now you use here either k dash and n dash if you have the cyclic properties. If you do not have the cyclic properties, use the notation k and n. Only these three equations we are going to make use when we talk about the cyclic behavior. We are not yet talked about the life equation, strain life equation. The strain life equation only I am going to discuss in the next chapter, next topic. Okay. So this is all about the basic stress strain behavior of a material under applied load, cyclic load, how a material is expected to behave. Okay, this recall is from the high cycle fatigue. It is for the next class. So we will stop up to here. Okay, anybody has any doubt, any queries, any questions regarding the topic we have discussed? You may raise that. If you do not have any queries, any question, we will end the class. Today there will not be a quiz as per the instruction from the department. As there is curriculum conclave is going on, we are not conducting the quiz. Okay. Anybody is having any doubt? Okay. If there is no doubt, we are going to end the meeting. Thank you all for joining for today's session. Have a nice day. We'll meet in the next class.